So I hope you've all enjoyed the conference so far, our keynotes, our movie screen, especially the digitalization panel that just ended, because we're going to talk about that topic a bit more in depth now. And in fact, welcome to the panel on circular startups and digitalization. Like I said, we have just seen in the digital panel how big institutional players can foster the transition from a circular economy thanks to digitalization in a top-down way. But now it's time to look at some bottom-up approaches, namely, how can grassroots actors like startups help? And we have gathered here in order to answer this question 6 startup founders and CEOs who can add to this conversation and will present the work they are carrying out in different industries, for example, construction, the textile industry, or waste management. So we will find out how do they use digital tools, how do these help them in fostering the transition to a more circular economy, and really the purpose here is to share some best practices, lessons learned, and future perspectives. So just a bit of formalia on the structure of the panel. We will have a discussion for 60 minutes and then a Q&A for 20. If questions arise, you can just type them in the chat or in the Q&A slot, where they can also be upvoted by other participants. And also, since we really want to make this conference interactive, you are very welcome to ask to share your audio and video and then actually ask the questions yourselves in our Q&A slot at the end. But now enough formalities, and let's move to our speakers. I think they are all there. Two maybe still need to turn their video on. I think we're missing Mattia and Friedrich. Oh, Friedrich is there now. Okay, we're only missing Mattia. I see him. Okay, I will just start by giving a brief introduction in no particular order. We have Dominic Campanella, CEO and co-founder of Concular and Restato, 2 startups which both aim at reducing waste in the construction sector. Then we have Mattia Zulli, founder and CEO at Agrevi, which is a farm management software company with a vision to change how food is produced. Next up, Henning Gilberg, founder and CEO of Repamera, which is Sweden's first online tailor that repairs clothes. And also in the business of giving goods a second life is Friedrich Köser, co-founder and CEO of Green Circle, a startup that facilitates customer-to-customer exchange of pre-loved goods. Then Petros Timotheou, founder and CEO of ICEEP, which digitizes brand-specific take-back schemes. And last but not least, Matthias Potthast, co-founder and managing director at Relevo, a smart and deposit-free reusable system for to-go and takeaway. Thank you all so much for being here. We are very excited about the discussion. And with no further ado, I would just jump straight into the questions, because we do have limited time available and a lot of speakers and a lot to talk about. So I did give a brief introduction about you and what you do. So maybe we could kickstart the conversation by expanding on that and having you talk to us a bit about what your startups deliver concretely and how do you employ digitalization in the process. Maybe Matthias at the top right on my screen would like to go first.
Sure, great. Thank you very much. I somehow hear myself double. Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation. As you said correctly, we at Relevo have a smart and deposit-free reusable system for to-go and takeaway. So what we do is what you basically, all of us probably are doing quite often in the last time when you are in home office, you go to grab lunch during lunchtime, you go to your favorite Italian restaurant around the corner.
Hello, Petros.
And instead of
are we the only one available here?
Okay.
Could you please
Henning, can you hear me? Okay, maybe I keep continuing.
Yeah, but by all means, go ahead, Matthias.
So what we do, you go into your favorite Italian restaurant, and instead of getting a single-use plastic for your favorite pasta, you get it in our reusable packaging, which you can pick up in one restaurant and drop off at any of our other partner restaurants. We have right now over 300 partner restaurants all over Germany, so a quite big distribution network for our reusables. And where our digitization comes in for our circular system is that instead of paying a deposit for your reusable, we use a QR code system. So you have a Relevo app in which you are registered, and you scan a QR code on this packaging. And by scanning this QR code, this packaging is assigned to your account. So you don't have to pay any deposit because it's attached to your profile. And through that, we can manage our whole circular loop and know all the time where our packagings are, and can keep track, can keep a proactive inventory management for restaurants, and can, especially, and that's the important point regarding of sustainability, can talk to our consumers, to our users, and tell them, hey, please bring your packaging back into the loop, into the circular, because only then we are, of course, sustainable if our packaging is reused multiple times, and we can manage that using our digital solution.
Very nice, thank you. And maybe Dominic can continue this conversation by talking about what his two startups actually deliver concretely.
Yeah, first of all, thank you a lot for the invitation today. It's really great to be part of this panel. So we at Concula/Restado, our vision is to make the construction sector resource and CO2 neutral. And why are we doing this? Because actually, and that's maybe not known to everyone, is that the construction sector is the largest polluter in the world. So 40% of GHG emission and 6% of waste are coming from that sector. And so we really have to change the way we build today. And what the problem is really today is that there is a lot of demolition ongoing and a lot of new constructions, right? And they are disconnected, because in a demolition project, buildings after 30, 40 years are getting demolished, and the materials inside that are getting landfilled. And then on the same spot, a new building is built with new materials, and that's a bit ridiculous. So there's no connection between the old and the new materials, and this connection we're actually creating by digitalizing buildings and the materials in it with so-called material passports to really know what materials are inside. And if the building is demolished, we are able to match the supply of the materials which we digitalize for in new construction projects. And so we're working there a lot with architecture offices, project developers, but also cities and municipalities to recirculating basically materials, and with that decrease the production of new materials, and with that the need for resources and also the emission of CO2 of CO2. Yes, so that is basically Concula. With Concula, we are more focusing on B2B, and with Restado more on B2C. That is like why we have like two brands, but basically it's kind of the same, just with different target groups.
Nice, thank you. And right under Dominic on the screen is Petros. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all, and excellent to connect with the other colleagues. I'm one of the founders of iKeep. We're based out of Zurich. We're a startup. Basically, we want to bring take-back schemes and the circular economies and the circular economy to households across Europe. What we do is basically we developed a mobile application that allows us to digitize the take-back schemes of individual brands, but also centralize them all into one single app, so consumers have a single touch point to be able to know how to return their used items. It goes in two ways. So if it's a public service, like your standard recyclables, they know where the recycling points are in their community, or what the schedule is for the collection service of their various recyclables. And then it goes to the individual brands. We help brands of all sizes, small brands and big brands across industries, digitize their take-back scheme. And we use gamification basically to incentivize consumers to return their items back to the brand so that it can be recycled and reused. There we go. And we hope that over time, I think a lot of big brands are doing it on their own, like Adidas, Nike. They have the capabilities and the resources and the outreach to implement their own take-back schemes. The smaller brands have a little bit of a harder time. And we hope that with iKeep, we can build up enough economies of scale so that all brands can have their own take-back scheme and start seeing their products being taken back from consumer households and closing their loop.
That sounds really exciting, and I would just hand it over directly to Mattia.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. And I'm the founder and CEO of Agrivi. Agrivi is a farm management software company, so we work in digitalizing the agriculture and the entire agricultural food value chain. So maybe just to understand how it works, so traditionally farmers make a lot of decisions based on historical knowledge and don't adapt to current climate changes and everything that's happening. So we try to provide them with real-time insights from their fields to move from preventive spraying and use a lot of pesticides to really minimizing that a lot to achieve sustainable agriculture practices and in the end to ensure that they as a business entity are profitable and sustainable in long run. And we work not just with farms but also with the entire value chain, like food companies where they work with farms to bring and adopt sustainable practices, regenerative practices, and reduce food waste between farms and food companies in the entire collaboration process. So this is our primary area of focus.
Very well, thank you. And then Friedrich, would you like to go next?
Also from my side, thanks. Thank you very much for the invitation. Yeah, I already had an interesting morning watching Cillian and other keynotes. So very happy to be here. Actually, with Green Circle, we going in a similar direction, or at least looking at the similar problem, kind of as Petros. So basically, what we're doing is we're providing a marketplace where communities can make visible what they have and basically buy and sell pre-loved or pre-owned goods, whereas we take over the whole door-to-door fulfillment. So basically, we want to make it super easy and convenient to exchange goods between households, because currently, I mean, everybody loves a second-hand deal, and the problem is the friction to sell. It's a time intense and complex process to pass on your products, as well as the more inelastic your demand gets, you default back buying new, because e-commerce today is such, you have this buy button, you click and it's on the door next day. And this is exactly what we want to bring to the second-hand market, is the online e-commerce convenience of today's linear consumption. So what we do is we provide a marketplace where you can upload or easily make visible what you have and don't use, and basically we take over everything else, the payment processes, the pickups, the deliveries, and all this in a packaging and green way. So how we use digitalization to actually foster that is that with scale we are able to actually bring transparency in what a community owns and what are people within the community need. So we can make this matching of, hey, what products are already produced and in our community and are available to who needs them, and make this allocation of the products actually transparent and efficient. Plus, at some point, providing this infrastructure where households can exchange the goods easily and conveniently from the comfort of their home. At some point, also leveraging this infrastructure to not only move products and household goods, but materials also, as mentioned, like a reverse direct to consumers, like getting all the recyclables out of the households and bringing them in bulk to the recycling companies. Or some point with every delivery you get from us, you can put in your old sneakers and we bring them to an upcycler, which turns sneakers into new shoes, which then are again distributed via a marketplace to the community. So basically building up a platform which provides communities with this infrastructure and learning by data on how to efficiently distribute and move products and materials. That's what we're trying to build with Green Circle.
Thank you. That's also a very cool idea that you had with your startup. And I would just move lastly to Henning. I saw you were having a bit of technical issues initially, so maybe I will just repeat the question just in case. So the question we were addressing was, what does your startup deliver concretely, and how do you employ digitalization in the process?
Thank you. What did you say the last part of the question?
How do you employ digitalization in the process when delivering your product?
Yeah, so we repair clothes online, and my startup is called Repamera. It means repair more in one word. And we repair clothes online. So it's a regular tailor shop. And I started out 2017 here in Malmö by biking around and picking up from people's doors and took it to the tailor shops here in Malmö. And then I just stood next to the cashier, the tailor, and what I saw, I created an e-commerce, and I packaged what people ordered when they went into a tailor shop. Like, I want to change my zipper, I want to repair my bag, I want to repair my jeans in the crotch, or the elbow of my shirt, for instance. And then since then I've been improving that, because e-commerce itself, in my opinion, isn't digitalization. Digitalization is when something becomes more convenient than the alternative, than the physical meeting. So now we have an e-commerce service where you order home a bag, and it's you stuff down your stuff and you hand it in, just in the same way as IKEA furniture is not. You have to build them by yourself, assembly them by yourself. In the same way, we don't help the customer with like taking the measurement if they want to adjust the shirt, or we don't help the customer specify, so they have to specify themselves, and therefore we save a lot of time, and therefore we can have lower prices than the regular tailor.
Thank you. So we've seen we have a lot of different perspectives here, a lot of different sectors like textile industry, construction, waste management. So trying to generalize a bit and gather some lessons learned already, I would like to ask you, how does digitalization help concretely? Meaning, this is a kind of a similar question to what I just asked, but what is its value added? What does it bring to you? Is it transparency? Is it speed, efficiency, or something else? Like trying to abstract it a bit from your own sector and generalizing it. Why do you think digitalization is important for the circular transition? Would anyone like to take this? Oh, yes, Henning, go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, the main part has been the reviews and the photos. So what you want when you are about to buy a service, you want to know if it's good and what the result will be afterwards. So a simple thing is to only put up your tailor shop on Google with reviews and photos, enables that for the customer. So that small part has. Just here we're in the lead because we have everything transparent.
Yes, and Petros have raised their hands. Maybe in this order, you can go ahead.
Sure, thanks. So what I see critical for a really sustainable future and a circular future is that we break this attitude behavior gap, which we see in the population and the consumers. So what people say what they want and what they want to do is a complete different side to what they actually do. It's this easy example. If you ask people, hey, are you do you have a healthy nutrition? Everyone is saying yes, sure. If you ask them, okay, what did you eat last week? They tell you, okay, pizza, Haribo, and a Coke, and I don't know, whatever. So we have this attitude behavior gap, and I think this is exactly where the the benefit of digitalization is coming in, because with a digital solution, we can improve the conveniency and the customer experience of users and show them that digital solutions which are sustainable have actually a more benefit than a single-use solution or a climate damaging solution. So we can bridge this gap of behavior attitude through digital experience and make it more comfortable, more convenient, and hence a better user experience for users, and therefore leveraging the sustainable innovation and technologies in order to come to a more sustainable future. So this is for me where the benefits of digitalization really come in to make it a more sustainable future.
Thank you. Petrus, please go ahead.
So I would say, I mean, in the principle, what digitization gives to us, yeah, it's its ability to take a single process that is very standard, and because it's digitized, you can then adapt it to the needs. The process has been standardized, but then it creates digitization creates flexibility so that you can adapt that process to specific customer needs. Okay, so for instance, whether it's an incentive program, if you build one incentive program without digitization, it only takes one single form. If you digitize it, you can into multiple forms, which covers the needs of our customers. And then what happens also with digitization from our part is its ability to deliver outreach of information to mass. Yeah, through a single process, through a single channel, we're much easier able to achieve access of the information and the service reach towards multiple users, which otherwise is very, very hard for, especially again, the bigger brands. They have their fan base, they have access to a very big mass of the population. Smaller brands, smaller companies don't have that outreach, and digitization allows them to reach out and have a voice which is better heard throughout the population. I think that's where the digital transition is really helping smaller companies that achieve what they're trying to do with you. Yeah.
Thank you. I see Friedrich and Mattia have raised their hands, so please go ahead in this order.
Great points. I wanted to also confirm both what Henning said and Matthias said. I think from Henning's side, the digitalization can drive or bring transparency in terms of trust, that people are feel more confident to adapt to new habits, and this is what we need change in behavior, and this is what Matthias says. A lot of people are willing to, or at least saying they are willing to change, but in the end, it's everybody want to behave sustainable, and it's a key word, and everybody agree, yeah, that's good. But what this really means in terms of behavior is a different thing when it comes to instant, short-term, unelastic things. You need to act quick, and then it's in most of the cases sustainable behavior is costly, is more inconvenient, needs more education and information to make a decision, and so digitalization can drive exactly these kind of factors to make an informative, quick, sustainable decision. And that's what I'm it's not easily, sustainability is not quick and easy and by now deciding in a sustainable way, and this is what digitalization can help with, making sustainable easy and the default. And this is in a variety of things, if it's trust on what Henning mentioned, or if it's just driving convenience in a way that you actually do what you like to do, and that's I think a big part of digitalization. Yeah.
Thank you. Mattia, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to bring also perspective from the current, when you take a look at industry point, and it's when we take a look from industry point, the food system is broken completely. So we want to eat healthy food, nutritious food, safe food all together, and this is something that we all expect, and we don't think about how it comes to us at all. So let me give you one customer example. So we have a customer that produces sweet corn in a can, so canned product, which you can buy in every supermarket, and they're a premium brand. To ensure the premium quality They basically source everything from farms that are around the factory in 60 kilometers, so the very integrated supply chain. And from the moment when they harvest basically corn till the can is done, it's only 4 hours in between. So very short life cycle to have the premium quality, so to meet the quality level. And they do the quality testing later on. If they identify that can contains too high residues of crop protection products, pesticides, they throw away entire batch, entire series, which is a huge food waste and huge financial loss altogether. And this is to ensure the food safety and the quality, because and for them it was acceptable loss because they make it with premium price altogether. But currently, when we take a look, okay, if this is what's needed to have that best quality and we waste that much food, well, that something is wrong altogether, because we cannot waste that much food. There is a lot of people hungry altogether. And so they started to use our platform, for example, and they bring all the agronomic advices to growers, how to make that quality in the best possible way. But digitalization helps them. So because when farmers spray, we have the data, we have the exact data. And when the moment of harvest comes, we tell them, okay, this field is safe to harvest or not safe. It will be safe in 3 days, 5 days. And we eliminate that food loss, basically wasting food from the table. And this is exactly how we save a lot of food, a lot of money. And I believe that when on one side that changing of customer behavior, understanding this is critical, because it always comes from the customer, but also we can bring efficiency into the existing industry a lot with digitalization.
Thank you. I see a lot of raised hands. I would maybe just jump over to the next question. I don't know if you can integrate your points, because we do have a lot to discuss and like quite a limited time, but I'm very happy to see all this willingness to interact. And actually my next
let's
question...
not break a good discussion. Can we take this before we jump over?
Sure, like my question was very much connected, but please go ahead and like make your final points.
Yeah, so I do think, as Friedrich is into, for instance, is that the alternative, we always have to benchmark it to the alternative, and the alternative is the current model. So for the most common thing right now is to buy something through e-commerce, or as Petros is talking about with recycling, that just throw in the regular trash bin. So to always have, is the digitalization I'm doing making it more convenient for the user than the alternative today, than the current solution? And I think, it's easier to do it like this. This is how little energy you have to, how little energy you as an individual has to use to do the service today. And this is the startup we're measuring. How much energy does the customer have to use? And the second they're above here, they start to become interesting for the user when you start to save more energy. Yeah, obvious point, but I had to make it anyway.
Yeah. What I quickly wanted to say, but it's just like I find Matthias, the industry, his startup is working around. I feel like agricultural practices and the whole agricultural sector is a great example of how digitalization can help being more sustainable in so many ways. Like if it's the most undigitalized industry, at least in my head, in terms of how my grandfather is a farmer, so I know how the practice is all. It's not digitalized at all, but now that you have technology to actually analyze the output of different farming styles, like carbon farming, which one brings most nutrition into the soil, so that what is the effect, how much CO2 you can actually capture with just doing farming and having climate positive products and so on. This is sharing practices and so on. I think this industry is a great example of how digitalization can drive these innovation or foster circularity and sustainability.
maybe I can also just add some quick note. So there's actually a digitalization index, and like the two least digitalized industry are the agriculture and the construction industry. So in construction, I mean, like they're still doing like the orders by phone or fax. So like that's like ridiculous how they're doing that. And so I think here really digitalization brings transparency and reach, because now when you have a demolition, I mean, no one like in every building you are, like no one knows what materials were built there. No one knows. Like there were plans maybe made for 60 years ago, but I'm not sure if you all saw these plans. They're like not really detailed and so on. So you have to give materials an identity before you can do something with that. And that's very important here. And also if you use the digital tools, you can, for example, get the material which might be in Berlin to Hamburg and so on before. So there were in the past these approaches by reuse centers where you went into a demolition, you thought like maybe that is a material which can be resold, and then you put it in the storage, and then you hope that someone might come there and buy it. But now you can do this all digital and before the demolition even happens, so that it also increases the efficiency of the whole process. And you can also measure. That's very important, because like we really have to measure what we are doing. So you can measure how much CO2 can you actually save and so on. So I think there's great opportunity in the whole construction sector for digitalization.
What did you mean with identity? Like you have to identify, can you explain that like in more general terms?
So yeah, the problem, so I think this, so maybe so there is this principle of product pass also in other industries, right? So so you have to kind of digital twin idea. Maybe I'm not sure how much I should explain it, but like so you have a physical element and you create the digital twin of it, and with that you can, for example, track something, or you can also exchange something. And so as said, like in the construction sector, the problem, so the demolition process, when the demolition happens, 2 or 3 weeks to find a new owner for the material. So it has to be very, very fast. And that is normally not sufficient to really recirculate materials. So, but if you can go in a building much earlier, because you know maybe a year before that a building is demolished, and you digitalize what materials are inside, so windows, facade elements, but also walls and so on, then you know already a year before, okay, what materials are getting. And so you can show the market, okay, with these material passports, okay, these are the materials, this is like the sizes, dimensions, whatever, and are you interested in? And people can already a year before integrate it in their planning phase of new projects. And so you can also plan the whole supply chain of the deconstructing the material, refurbishing it, and so on. So this is what I mean with identity. So you make something visible, actually.
Yeah, it's the same as Friedrich and them are doing with the door-to-door marketplace in a way.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm very happy to see all of this engagement, but I would like to get back on track and move to the next question because
we've only gone through 1 point so far. And actually, this was going to be very much
and I was going to move towards the disadvantages of digitalization, because now you have all talked about like its potential, what is good about it, how does it help, but we also know digitalization is a buzzword, and
people are sort of like, yeah, it's like this magic solution to everything, but there are, as a matter of fact, also disadvantages to it. So I would like you, if possible, to talk about like what are some hurdles that you encountered when employing, like when putting into practice your startup idea. Did you have problems with like infrastructure or data protection or anything else? Like what is the other side of digitalization that is not talked about as much?
Right.
Yes, please, Matthias.
So talking about quickly reminding what we have, this digital system to track our reusable packaging across from users and restaurants. We are working together with many universities across Germany, and all the canteens are provided with our reusables, so the students can actually get, instead of single use, can use a reusable packaging. However, you would think that in 2021 and at especially universities, you have a good internet connection, which is required for our service. However, unfortunately, we are living in Germany in 2021, and most of the universities have really a terrible infrastructure when it comes to the connection of for the internet. So often, for example, the canteen is in the basement or in some kind of areas within their buildings, which is protected by a steel concrete or whatsoever, limiting the connection and therefore making a digital usage quite difficult. So there is, I think, a big time need for infrastructure changes regarding that topic. And of course, we face the topic of privacy and data protection on a daily basis. And this is, of course, a very, very critical topic. And especially for us as a consumer brand, and we manage and operate with a lot of consumer data. We know exactly when you borrow an item in which restaurant and at what restaurant you give it back and at what time. So whenever we talk with a bigger client, for example, a bigger company to talk about their canteen or a student university or also with investors, always the topic comes up with data protection and privacy. And as this is at the one point, it's a very, very important topic, and it's important to take really care of it. At the same time, it's regarding the speed and progress you're doing as a startup. It can be a very complex topic to dive in and to set yourself in the right way, which is needed, but a quite complex process. And I think also here, Germany has a lot of, let's say, system change to do.
Very well known in Germany. We're also having it a bit now since we are streaming from Berlin, but I did see a couple of other hands raised while you were talking. So would anyone else want to add to the topic? Yes, Mattia and Petrus and Friedrich.
So I also want to share the concern about data privacy and data ownership. Farm data ownership is one of the biggest topics in digitalization of agriculture, especially when a lot of corporations from the traditional industry, like seed agrochemicals, started to acquire startup companies in the space and getting a very closed ecosystem around their farms that are using the technology, and then how they're using actually that. So whether they're using that just to close their ecosystem and upsell their products or whatever. So a lot of questions and concerns were raised about farm data ownership, and this is still being one of the biggest topics, and this is one of the threats. And there is also a barrier as well, and the barrier is, I believe, that the same with that happens in digitalization of other industries, and this is the change management, actually, adoption of technologies, because digitalization is not a magic wand where you just buy something and all the problems disappear. It is just a tool that supports actual real life processes and makes decision making better, changes the behavior, brings something additionally. And I like to say, especially in agriculture, it is about like going to the gym. We all know that it's great. We all know that going every day is something that should be nice, exercising every day. It's hard to start with that. It's even harder to maintain. And the same is when you want to use the digital technologies in agriculture. Farmers are very hard to start, even they know that it's great for them. And keeping and changing their behavior on a daily basis, it's even harder. So that's those are the challenges.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. And also Henning, I saw added to
Matthias, do you think the change of your industry is focused around the new generation of taking ownership of farms? Are younger people taking ownership of farms?
It helps, it supports, but it's not. If it is fully about the free will, it will take a long time because agriculture is seasonal. You have one season per year, so it takes really a lot of time. And I like to compare it with, for example, if car insurance would be non-obligatory in countries, penetration of that would be very, very low. Like in agriculture, insurance penetration is very low. So regulatory, they made it obligatory. Now everybody has it. So for some things that we see critical altogether, like in food as well, some things needs to be regulated to drive and foster the adoption that to take up. So
Interesting.
think-
From my side, Lubrita, I think the infrastructure of digitization. I mean, as a startup, you base a lot of your business on assumptions that you're going, especially if you're a B2C startup, if you're going into mass market with consumers, you take a few assumptions, you're building infrastructure around those assumptions, and it's very hard to backtrack. So once you start building something, if you've got the assumptions all wrong, and you have to go backwards on the development that you build, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So if you're resource tight, especially in the beginning, you need to really test your assumptions of what you're building and validate them with the market before you go ahead and plug in a lot of money into building this infrastructure, and eventually have good, like, we don't develop in-house, we develop everything outsourced. So it would be good to have good developers that can build flexible infrastructure, understand that basically what you're building is based on assumptions, and know very carefully where those assumptions are, so that you can somehow circumvent it and come back and adapt the system as you go forward into the market. I think that's where digitalization is being tough for us, if you want.
To quickly agree with Petros, I had the same, or I have the same experience, like making always this call of investing time and money into development where you still need to, or it's based of a lot of assumptions and unknowns, and you need to be flexible, but still also bringing out a product, because this is the way you connect to your consumers or people you interact with. On a side note, of course, data protection is always a big issue, but what are two things I'd like to raise is, first of all, digitalization and this instantly available access to everything in the world, generally speaking, I think has a big downside in terms of our relationship to products and goods we consume. Like having this cheap products instantly available next day on your door foster the perception or your relationship that products are disposable. They come quick, they go quick. And this if you compare it to 70 years ago, like people like were really worth shipping what they have and repairing it and reusing it, and just because it wasn't like you couldn't exchange it in that quick, efficient, easy, fast way. So I think this is the downside of having everything accessible and cheaply and quickly. And also to take up the point Matthias raised of just technical accessibility or digital accessibility, making everything more efficient and transparent is a great thing, but like you need to make sure that everybody has access and is on board. Otherwise, you really divide people into, hey, these are the ones prioritized enough to join the movement of a digital transformation towards circularity, versus people just don't have access or live in rural areas where they cannot participate. And I guess this is also talking a lot about circularity, means also in a moving forward in a social way. And don't forget about that, meaning also getting everybody to make use out of the innovation we bring in this field. So I guess that's a second big part which we shouldn't underestimate or forget.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Henning, please go ahead. Try and talk again. I feel like we're not hearing you very well. You're muted.
Maybe
can you try to unmute yourself? Yes,
think,
please, Dominic,
he's
jump in
just
and then
checking.
add
I
later.
jump in, take the opportunity. So I think maybe also for the construction sector, I think so the construction sector is very conservative, and so there's this mindset problem in terms of. I mean, they just don't see the needs in digitalizing. They don't want to digitalize, and they also like, yeah, as they are very old school, you have to really do that step by step, and that makes it very difficult sometimes. Yeah, to also to get into the mind. I mean, architects, most of them, they plan on paper, right? And they're doing mails, and now you have to explain them like a software. They can search construction materials. That's sometimes a lot of a big challenge. And data privacy, for example, is not a big issue for us. Which is good. But also another problem is data quality. So I mean, I think like manufacturers and so on, they don't want the comparability of materials, so they don't provide a lot of information, and also a lot of materials are very custom or individualized. So it's very difficult to bring them from like the physical product into a digital one, because they are so different. Yeah. So I think this is like a big issue, and how you digital systems who can adapt to this individual approach of construction materials.
Thank you. Henning, please go ahead.
As with B2C, and you have to backtrack. So what came to my mind was like, what's happening now with the ad blocks and the cookies, everything with tracking, how that small thing that Apple is blocking it, the choice for the customer, how that is changing the roadmap for like every e-commerce out there. I think that is one hurdle, like how the big players can change a lot with small adjustments. And another thing I think can be a hurdle is that we have so many, like, applications came, like the smartphone, everyone built an app, and my iPhone was filled with apps, and then all of a sudden I only want like 5 apps. I want one screen. And all of us, like, if we everything that can be digitalized, if it requires too much from the customer, too much, like you have to have an account there, an account there, an account there, then it will just backlash. So I do think some kind of like central management system for all circularized, digitalized ideas or something. I don't know. What do you think?
Cities have a lot to play with this, Henning. I think there's apps, of course, that we have all the time, that we use for personal entertainment reasons, music, and so on. That's a different story. And then there's the tools that come into play to manage cities, okay? To manage the resources of cities, to manage how we consume in cities. And I think there's a co-collaboration between cities, companies, and consumers that can happen, and the big companies like Microsoft and Apple and all these guys to really focus on building urban tools that minimize the footprint of cities. And I think this should be kind of seen as a co-development, or I would like it to be seen as a co-development between urban communities and the big players at the end, the big corporates that are pushing consumerism at quite a high level, if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for raising the topic of cities. Actually, I very much encourage you to participate in tomorrow's panel about circular cities, because we might talk about that. And like I said, you're very welcome to jump in and ask questions in that as well. However, excuse me, I would like now to build up on what we have just discussed. So like issues and problems with digitalization. And I would like to ask you, what are some changes that you would welcome, especially policy-wise? Like, what do you think policymakers should be more aware of? Are there any like most effective policies or overlooked policies that already exist that really helped you? For example, I was doing some research and I found that in Sweden, smaller businesses which extend the lifetime of products benefit from a reduction in VAT? Like, do these kind of things actually help you, or do you need something else? And if so, what is it? Yes, Henning, I see your raised hand.
Yeah, for instance, if you buy new clothes in Sweden, it's at 20% VAT. First of all, I'm quite against taxation, but I see now when we have linear and circular system, if we let the taxation stay as it is on the linear businesses and for linear consumption, then we can just decrease it for circular businesses. So what
I think we lost connection.
It seems like Henning is having some technical issues. Henning, okay.
Yeah.
I think
No.
we're missing a few seconds. Would you like to maybe start again?
Oh, I'm really sorry. Never the problem, but today it is. So yeah. Do you hear me fine now, everyone?
Yes, now it's perfect.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So linear systems have the taxations are built up based on the linear system. I think what we can do is decrease like taxes for labor, taxes for consumption if you consume circular. So in Sweden, one example is that the taxation for repair is instead of 25% if you buy a new piece of clothes, the VAT, it's 12% to repair. And that small change happened 12 days before I started my startup. And therefore, it's a really good way if they just half everything that is circular, like half the labor cost if you have a circular business, then more people will work within circular businesses. Half the VAT if it's rental, repair, or reuse, or eliminate the VAT for secondhand stuff and so on.
Thank you. Yes, I have Friedrich, Matthias, and Dominic.
So what I experience, at least, like we also offer secondhand service, basically saying, hey guys, whoever is too lazy or has no time to upload listings to the marketplace and even doesn't have time to make visible what they don't need anymore, is we pick that up and we upload it for our customers to the marketplace, and then we directly have this product with us and are able to deliver next day with the same convenience as Amazon Prime, for example. So really trying to make or bringing an alternative to that. But what we learn is like the quality of products is crazy low, and like we want to kick off many product cycles, and we want to be at some point able to track, okay, this product really went from person 1 to person 2 to person 3, and at some point maybe to the same person again. So what product cycle? But currently the quality doesn't ensure even to have 2 product circuits. So what I feel like could be an option is that you incentivize by, or that you somehow get corporates to extend guarantees on the quality, or to establish or incentivize that they take back products, that there is a guarantee to take back products, or just political measures to increase the quality. Or in the whole beginning, and that's what Cillian talked about earlier in his keynote, is the easiest and quickest way to actually drive circular economy is by starting how we design our goods and looking really into how are products produced and how are they manufactured. Is this a modular way? Can we retrieve all the raw materials once it's not used anymore, and so on? So this is a great way, I think, where we can kick off circular economy quickly. And looking into how they produce could be, or I don't have a specific political measure in mind now, but this is an area where there is a big field of taking it.
I jump in as I have a microphone next to you, because the reason that products are designed this way is because of the system that are current right now.
Yes, please. I think Matthias and Dominic that wanted to jump in as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I think what is needed for a climate justice and climate friendly future is what I like to call the triangle of sustainable change, which have to work together. So we have effective regulations, we have sustainable innovation, and we have powerful consumer decisions or choices. And so quickly to talk about those, we talked about already the consumer choices with the attitude behavior gap. People can only consume what is offered in the market. So what we need as a basis is sustainable innovation, leveraging technology and business model innovation to really drive innovation in a sustainable way. And we have great examples of companies who do exactly that right now here. However, what is, I think, and that was the question, is most important to some degree is the topic of effective regulations. Because in order to break the status quo and to gain relevant market share against the legacy technologies and incumbents, these emerging sustainable innovations and technologies really need effective regulations to get kicked off or to get kick-started in the market. However, unfortunately, at least in Germany, our current government is, I think, driven too much and influenced too much by lobbyism. And as we can see in my area right now is we have by 2023, we have the law for mandatory reusable offering for takeaway. However, I have to cry when I read this law because it's a shame how lobbyism influenced this law and how many exceptions there are, making this law actually ineffective. And so what I wish for the future is that we have public policies which are not driven by lobbyism and legacy incumbents, but which take emerging technologies and sustainable innovation and the possibilities of digitalization in that term into account in order to really make use of a more sustainable innovation.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely agree to Matthias that like some laws in Germany are very funny. Also, the external product responsibility law in Germany, the only thing which is like based on that law is the title, and the rest is not linked to actually the title. Still, I think lobbyism is a good thing. Because also we, as like leaders in circular economy, can use lobbyism to influence the policy. And I think maybe to start with my contribution, I think the policy framework is the most important to make all of our businesses work. And to add to Henning, I think very important the taxation system. So tax resources. Tax resources and not labor. And there's also some initiative which is called X-Tax. So I just posted that on the EU level that they want to introduce that, because what would happen is that we would really think about what we do. And when labor is not anymore taxed that much, and there and a circular economy labor, then there's also like it makes it also more, and so there's a different incentive. And the second policy area, really the extended producer in a real way, so that producers have to take back their products, but they also have to be really transparent how they produce the product and have to show the CO2 emission or where all the resources they take for the product. Maybe also some very specific or two specific points for the subsidies. Right now, for example, the production of concrete is subsidized. Like the biggest or the largest killer in terms of CO2. So it's like three times more than the whole aviation. It's the CO2 emissions of, and so that like but also countries are giving money to these companies so that we push more CO2 into the air and change, right? So these subsidies have to be more on resources like wood and so on. And the last point is actually so like building. So like how to build something is very regulated. It's important because safety and so on. It's also regulated that you can't easily take the material from an existing building into a new building, because in between it will get a clash. It's not something new anymore, and then you like, if something fresh, you can also trash it, and that should be not the case, right? So there must be a change also in like very specific regulation, but it's very hard because there are interests from the current stakeholders to the status quo. A way to break that is to together have like a lobby for circular economy, and that slowly comes, but I mean, yeah, it still takes a lot of time, unfortunately.
Yes, Mattia, maybe one last point, because we're already a bit over time and we do have a few questions in the Q&A part. I'm very sorry to have to break up the discussion because it feels like you all have a lot to say, but we do have limited time, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that the biggest driver of the change is always when you play with the pocket of money of somebody, and everybody is sensitive on financials. And what Dominic said, subsidies are very strong tool to move any stakeholder to any direction. Agriculture is fully based on subsidies, and just imagine if you say that you will not get the subsidy if you don't have fully digital traceability of how you produce, how much that can speed up the things. So subsidies and industries that rely on subsidies, they can be a powerful tool to actually push the change.
Thank you very much. So I would just jump to a Q&A session, and the most upvoted question so far is by Ali Tucker, who asks, could you address how your startups are incorporating the human component of a just circular transition? How can your startups incorporate the most marginalized and most impacted by the climate crisis? And maybe I can also personally add to that question, because I think, like we've all noticed, this panel is very much not diverse, and it was very hard during the speaker acquisition process to try to find diversity in startup founders. So maybe just a second part to the question would be from my side: how can you include more women and more minorities in the circular transition in the startup world? Is it hard? Like, do you see any hurdles there? And like, do you do anything concretely to foster that?
We're not a group. Me, Mattia, Matthias, Dominic, and Friedrich, we're not a group.
Yeah, no, I know, but like during the speaker acquisition process, it was extremely hard to form a diverse group. Like pretty much all the startup founders and circular.
We're not a group.
But we are all male,
yeah.
And I think there's like
that doesn't make us a group.
Yeah, but still, I think diversity also means diversity in gender, and I think that is not. So
maybe
yeah.
I can add also from our side, as from our company, we really play on the diversity side and human component side. We are proud that we are a technology company in agriculture. Both are very, when you take a look at percentage-wise in gender, more male-oriented. We have 45% of female in our organization, as well in leadership, and we try to really empower. We are mentors and supporters of women in food and agriculture, and we try to really push and support that gender equality, because what we see is actually that female farmers are better with digitalization than male. So I think that this is also speaking about acceptance of digital technologies, and they are vital for actually adopting the change altogether. So
Thank you. That's very interesting. I see Friedrich wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I agree with Mattia. Also, when assembling a team, and that's what I at least feel from the startup scene, and which is a great development. If you see the companies getting investment, if you see the requirements for a lot of VCs and funds also to say, hey, we don't invest in a not diverse team, and we promote diversity in teams. This at least this is what I experience is
key to actually make this a topic and actively foster that if you find a business, you set up a diverse team. So nevertheless, it's very hard. I not hard in terms of like, it's difficult to sometimes find the right person in if you're looking for a female CTO, for example, is very hard to find and very hard to get, and a lot of people are looking. So the issue of is not solved by solely saying, hey, I only look at this group or this group, but it's generally, it needs a lot of different factors to actually get to a result of a diverse team. That's what I want to say. Secondly, not in terms of gender diversity, but generally how can we contribute to a more circular way and look on also on the, like, globally on the people most affected of linear consumption, having amounts of trash getting dumped in their countries is, and that's when I talked to Robin from Vino Kilo, and he explained me the way what, like, how, can you hear me, or is it yeah, okay, the actually the root of fashion and where things are dumped to, like a hot potato from one country and ending up in third world countries, which they deal with it and then they re-import it to Europe to sell it again. So making sure and incentivizing that we take responsibility and ownership of the waste they produce. This is a big issue I feel is not really currently solved. And when I listened to Cillian earlier, he defined waste as goods and material without an ownership. And that's actually a nice way of explaining what waste is. And also it includes the solution of really making sure companies are owning what they produce as a waste and like taking the responsibility for that ownership. And I feel like not with the startup I'm funding, I'm not solving this whole problem, but it's something where also policies, but also startups can help. Like, how can we actually improve the waste management of big corporates?
Thank you. Henning, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to address Ali Tucker, her question. How can startups incorporate the most marginalized and most impact by the climate crisis? For me, working in Sweden is quite, the only thing I could do is focus on my startup. And the result of that, I can't change what's happening in like third world countries. But what's happening is that, speaking of diversity, my startup is focusing on quality, and quality is what the customer likes. And the more I focus on quality, the more I see that that's the only way to break barriers. Like, if people have prejudices against short people, for instance, if a guy makes the best falafel in Malmö and he's really short, then people will start to buy that falafel anyway. And that's what I've been doing when I'm recruiting, and therefore, like, my startup is mainly people who are not speaking the language, and it's a huge barrier when we communicate internally with each other, but the customers loves it, and that's what my business is all about. So even though we have a barrier, the customer gets the best tailor there is in Sweden.
That's a very interesting point and very interesting best practice. I think Dominic raised his hand.
Yeah, so I mean, what we are doing with Concula is that we're reducing the resource, right? And this resource extraction leads to a lot of issues. So giving the example of people stealing sand from the beaches from India, and there's like a whole sand mafia, and also like in Colombia, the coal, where like like whole families get murdered so that they can get the coal and so on. So actually the problem is that on construction material there's a lot of blood. And by trying to, first of all, localize this production, but also reducing reducing the extraction of such resources, we hope that we can decrease these conflicts, which there are, but also like it's a big social issue, right? I mean, it's also a very sensitive issue, and so we hope that we can also, in the long term, reduce the price of like building a building by reusing materials, and that hope also to get some more justice in like the housing market in the countries we operate in. Yeah. And maybe one more thing. So like the construction sector is very male dominated. I'm happy that like our team is quite female, so 6% of our team is female. But that was not like something we really targeted for. So I mean, like we normally, when someone is applying to us, we not like saying like this is a woman, and so now this woman, so like we value that more. It's just like what we saw is actually that, or that is my assumption. I can't generalize that. It's like that I see like women are a bit more interested in like to really doing an impact in this world, and like much more motivated to really change something. And so somehow that was like the natural selection, that we are now ending up with more women than male team members. And that's actually something I'm really happy for.
Yes, thank you, Dominic. That was very interesting as well. And we only have a couple of minutes left, but a lot of other questions. So I would try to just go briefly over the very last one, that is the second most upvoted one. And it's actually very general, so I would just ask you all to please keep it brief. And the question is, what were the main hurdles to establish your startup? I don't know who would like to go ahead. Yes, Friedrich and Mattia then.
To make it short, team, setting up and finding the right people to join your mission and really get excited and own the problem is actually also something I spend a big portion of my time with, finding the right people to make this project happen and to make it big. And that's the core, actually. No matter what you do in the end and what the output is, like having a great team is the key to success. No matter if you start with this business model A or this problem A you want to solve, but ending up solving a completely different, bigger, smaller, any kind of problem, is what I want to say is finding the right team is the key. And this is the biggest issue or
yes, we have Mattia and then Matthias, and then we unfortunately need to close up the panel.
Yeah, I can definitely agree that the team is the main one. So it is the key success factor, and it is the super hardest part, to find the right people who are very inspired with what you do, because we are all in transformative projects, which are hard, which are not easy to do, and having the right people that will work very passionate about it it's a challenge. And the second one is definitely fundraising for transformative projects, because they're not, again, the easiest one. So those two.
Yes, please, Matthias, you had your hand raised, I believe. You're muted still. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, and seems like we have some technical issues there. But That's actually not that bad, probably, because we are unfortunately out of time. However, I would really like to thank you all for participating and for sharing your insights. I know it was a very broad topic. I know we have not covered everything, but I do believe we have gathered a lot of very interesting insights that we maybe will also be able to address tomorrow or later. We have a global trade panel this afternoon, and tomorrow we have global cities, which is also a point that came up today. So yeah, again, thank you so much.